Tarot's Minor Arcana, the Suit of Swords. Welcome back, Tarot fans! This is part 3 of Bestie's deep dive into the 78 cards that make up the tarot deck, starting with the 56 cards that make up the Minor Arcana. In our previous 2 videos, we took a look at the Suit of Cups and the Suit of Wands. If you haven't watched those already, we strongly suggest you check them out to catch up on what you missed. There are 2 suits left to cover in the Minor Arcana, so today we're going to be taking a look at the 14 cards that make up the suit number 3, the Suit of Swords. If these kinds of videos are your thing, you should take the time to subscribe to Bestie and ring the notification bell to stay up to date on all our daily videos and content. Like the other 3 suits in the Minor Arcana, the Suit of Swords is divided into 14 cards, consisting of 10 numbered cards and 4 face cards. Each suit in the Minor Arcana also carries an association with one of the 4 classical elements. In the case of swords, this is the element of air. This means that the cards in the Suit of Swords are also associated with the air signs in the Western astrological zodiac: Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. According to tarot enthusiasts, the cards in the Suit of Swords deal primarily with themes centered on the mind, thoughts, and intellect. Because the human mind is an inherently complex thing, this leads to a number of different interpretations and supposed meanings for the cards in this suit. With that preamble out of the way, let's take a look at the 14 cards that make up the Suit of Swords, as well as some of their possible meanings in a card reading. Ace of Swords. The artwork for the Ace of Swords is, unsurprisingly, a hand holding a sword. Following the pattern set by the Ace of Cards in the previous 2 suits, the Ace of Swords is said to be symbolic of new beginnings. In this case, new ideas, new plans, and intellectual breakthroughs. This card may also be used to denote success or victory, maybe in the form of a eureka moment that gets you out of a mental funk. If this card shows up in a reading reversed, aka upside down, the Ace of Swords can instead represent a lack of ideas or clouded judgment. 2 of Swords. On the 2 of Swords, we see a person holding, well, 2 swords, striking a pose that looks like something out of a poster for an early 2000s action movie. In a tarot reading, the 2 of Swords can represent a difficult decision in which you should probably weigh your options before proceeding. It can also be read as symbolizing an impasse or stalemate in a conflict between 2 or more people. Reversed, this card can instead be indicative of indecision, delayed plans, or lies being exposed. I guess there's nothing like a person holding 2 swords to remind you that honesty is the best policy. 3 of Swords. Take a look at the Valentine-style heart being pierced by 3 swords in the front of this card. Now, give me 3 guesses as to what this might symbolize. If you said heartbreak, you'd be correct. The 3 of Swords represents emotional pain and grief inflicted on us by the words or actions of others, or even by ourselves. If you feel alone, betrayed, or otherwise down in the dumps, then chances are you might expect to see this card in a tarot reading. The good news is that when reversed, this card can instead represent a release of pain and overcoming negative emotions, as well as optimism and forgiveness. 4 of Swords. The 4 of Swords has been interpreted to be a sign of restfulness, relaxation, meditation, and recuperation. If you happen to be going through a stressful period of your life or a nasty bout of anxiety, seeing this card in a reading might mean that it's time to slow down. Take a deep breath and try to get your bearings before moving forward. If reversed, this card can instead represent exhaustion, feeling burnt out, restlessness, and a lack of self-care. So either way, this card can potentially signal a bit of a wake-up call, depending on where it appears in your tarot reading. 5 of Swords. As you might have guessed, based on the stern look of the person on the right side of this card, the 5 of Swords is believed to show up in times of conflict or disagreement. More specifically, the 5 of Swords is believed to represent defeat, whether that comes in the form of a fair and square loss, surrender, or simply walking away from a losing battle. If this card shows up for you in a reading, that could mean it's time to dust off those conflict resolution skills you learned in kindergarten and start putting them to good use in order to smooth things over. If reversed, the 5 of Swords can instead be a symbol of peaceful resolution, making amends and reaching an agreeable compromise in a conflict. Six of Swords. While the Five of Swords represents the setbacks brought about by conflict or disagreement, the Six of Swords is all about progress and moving forward. This card is believed to represent times of transition, healing, and letting go of personal baggage. That is, unless the card is reversed, in which case the Six of Swords might instead spell out a lack of progress, changing or abandoned plans, and getting sidetracked or stuck by delays and other problems. I guess it's not always smooth sailing after all. Seven of Swords. In the artwork for the Seven of Swords, we see a man sneaking off with 2 armfuls of stolen medieval weaponry in tow, looking over his shoulder to make sure he doesn't get caught. The Seven of Swords represents betrayal, deception, trickery, and using underhanded tactics to get what you want. If reversed, this card instead represents a confession or coming clean, perhaps admitting to some sort of wrongdoing you caused in the past. It could also be a symbol of getting caught in the act and subsequently running away from the consequences of your misdeeds. Crime doesn't pay, kids. Eight of Swords. As the less than cheerful looking artwork on the front of this card might suggest, the Eight of Swords is believed to be symbolic of negative emotions. Feeling trapped, anxiety, and feeling like a victim. Seeing this card in a reading might mean that you're currently in a stressful situation or one in which you feel backed into a corner. The good news is that the reversed reading of this card can instead represent freedom from the things that previously restrained you. Or it could be a symbol of releasing negative thoughts and opening yourself up to new possibilities. Nine of Swords. If you thought the Eight of Swords was a bit of a downer, you might want to buckle up for this one. In a tarot reading, the Nine of Swords is believed to be a representation of anxiety, fear, worry, depression, and nightmares. Since the Suit of Swords as a whole relates heavily to the inner workings of our minds, the 9 swords hanging over a figure shown on this card could represent negative thoughts and emotions, looming over a person's head, both literally and figuratively. When reversed, the 9 of Swords can instead represent the light at the end of a tunnel, letting go of negativity and stress, or opening up and accepting help from others. 10 of Swords. The last of the numbered cards in the Suit of Swords is, yep, you guessed it, the 10 of Swords. Following the pattern set up by the 8 of Swords, it seems like each of the sword cards just gets gradually more depressing than the last. In a tarot reading, the 10 of Swords is commonly interpreted as spelling out failure, painful endings, betrayals, breakdowns, and unhappy goodbyes, none of which sound particularly fun, if you ask us. If reversed in a reading, this card can instead be representative of recovering from one of these painful events, rising above your problems, and successfully pulling yourself back together. It's always darkest before the dawn, as they say. Page of Swords. With the numbered cards out of the way, that brings us to the face cards of the Suit of Swords, beginning of course with the Page of Swords. According to occult circles, this sprightly lad holding his sword high is believed to be a sign of new ideas, inspiration, curiosity, a thirst for knowledge and communication. This card also represents having the foresight to think before you speak, and taking precautions before impulsively throwing yourself into new situations. If reversed, though, this card might represent the look don't leap mindset taken to its natural conclusion, representing someone who is all talk but no action, held back by lack of ideas or a scatterbrained mentality. Sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and get stuff done without needing to overthink it. Knight of Swords. Next up in the face cards is the Knight of Swords, depicting yet another brave knight rushing in on horseback. The Knight of Swords is a card that represents ambition, action, opportunities, courage, and a desire to seize the moment. In a lot of ways, this card seems to be the opposite of the Page of Swords. While the Page is all about planning, the Knight of Swords is instead all about impulsive actions and making the most of an immediate situation. If reversed, this card instead can represent missed opportunities, loss of control, restlessness, and a lack of focus or tact. Queen of Swords. Second to last in the suit of swords is the Queen of Swords, representing independence, unbiased judgment, constructive criticism, clear boundaries, and direct communication. As you might have guessed, the Queen of Cards in the Minor Arcana tend to represent a lot of relatively big ideas related to their suit's aspects, and the Queen of Swords is no exception. If reversed, the Queen of Swords might instead represent someone who is overly critical, pessimistic, easily influenced, and lacking in compassion or empathy. King of Swords. The final stop on our tour of the Swords suit is the King of Swords. The regal figure seated on the front of this card is believed to be a symbol of mental clarity, truth, authority, routine, and methodology. In a lot of ways, the King of Swords represents a culmination of everything we learned in the previous 13 cards in this suit, bringing that knowledge together to form a healthy and complete mindset. If reversed, this card can potentially be intended to warn off what you might be lacking to reach this level of completion, such as a lack of structure, routine, rationality, humanity, or discipline. So what do you think of our breakdown of the Suit of Swords? Do you disagree with any of the interpretations we used for this video? What do you think of this series as a whole so far? Let us know in the comments section below to help keep the conversation going. Next time, we'll be looking at the final suit of the Minor Arcana, the Suit of Pentacles. Thanks for watching. Enjoyed this video? Hit the like button and share with your friends. Also, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.